You type the address correctly, the page loads over HTTPS, the padlock is right there in the address bar, and you're still on an attacker's server. In this video, we're decoding lookalike attacks like phishing, typosquatting, and DNS poisoning. 3 different techniques, 3 different layers of the same journey. First, a working definition. A lookalike attack is any technique that impersonates something you already trust. A sender, a domain name, a login page, or even a DNS answer itself. The important part is that these attacks do not break encryption, and they do not exploit a memory corruption bug. They exploit pattern recognition. Your brain skims text. It sees a familiar logo, a familiar name, a padlock, and it fills in the rest. Attackers know that and they build for it. The payoff is almost always the same. Harvested credentials, hijacked sessions, or a foothold for malware. And the economics favor the attacker. A domain costs a few dollars, phishing kits are sold as a subscription service, and one campaign can hit thousands of inboxes in minutes. Now, the good news is that every one of those attacks does leave visible artifacts. So this video is about training your eye to catch them before you click. Think of your journey to a website as 3 layers. The message layer, something convinces you to act. That's phishing. The domain layer, a registered domain visually imitates a real one and hosts the fake destination. That's typosquatting. And the resolution layer, you type the correct name, but a forged DNS answer sends you somewhere else entirely. And that is DNS poisoning. It's the same goal at every layer. Different artifacts to look for at each one. Now for phishing, that's the message layer. It's the same con delivered through different channels, and the channel changes the name, not the mechanics. Classic email phishing is the mass campaign. Fake shipping notices, fake bank alerts, fake IT password resets. Spear phishing is the researched, personalized version aimed at a specific person or team. Whaling points that spear at executives and finance approvers, the people who can authorize a wire transfer, for example. Then the channels multiply. Smishing arrives by text message, usually a shortened link about a package or an unpaid toll. Vishing is the phone call, and AI voice cloning has made those calls dramatically more convincing. And notice the last one, business email compromise often contains no link and no attachment at all. Just plain text, authority, and urgency. I'm in a meeting. I need this invoice paid today. The absence of a payload is exactly why it slips past filters. Let's dissect a phishing email, for example. Look at the anatomy. The display name might say Microsoft support, but if you look at the actual address in the angle brackets, alerts at Microsoft-security.com, you see that Microsoft has the 0 as the O for in the soft part. So the 0 standing in for the letter O on a domain Microsoft has never owned. The display name is attacker-controlled text, and it can say anything. The subject line manufactures urgency. Account suspended in 24 hours. Urgency is the engine of phishing because a rushed reader is a careless reader. The greeting is generic, dear customer, your bank knows your name, so you know that that might not be real for that reason. And here's the single highest value habit in this entire video. The displayed link text says account.microsoft.com. The real href, the destination you see when you hover, is a completely different domain. So you hover over those links because you can make them say whatever you want. You hover over them to identify where it's really going potentially. Link text is just decoration. So your message layer checklist, 1, hover before you click every time. On a mobile, long press the link to preview the destination. 2, expand the display name and read the full sender address and read the domain right to left. A familiar name sitting on top of a strange domain is the tell. 3, if you can view headers, check the authentication results line. SPF, DKIM, and DMARC verdicts are recorded right there. And a fail on mail claiming to be from a major brand is a red flag. 4, any messages that combine urgency with the request for credentials or payment, that means stop right there. Verify through a channel you already trust. Don't use a phone number from the email. Don't use a link from the email. Look for a bookmarked site or a known phone number. And then now we move down the layer. Phishing needs somewhere to send you to. And that brings us to typosquatting. Attackers registering real, functioning domains that imitate a target. This works so well because the typosquat domain is legitimate infrastructure. It resolves. It loads over HTTPS. It shows a padlock. Nothing is technically broken because the attacker genuinely owns that domain. The deception is entirely in the name. These domains host cloned login portals, fake password reset pages, malicious downloads, and ad fraud landing pages. And they collect traffic in two ways, from phishing links and passively from people who simply mistype an address. Security teams know this, which is why many organizations defensively register the common typos of their own brand, and attackers will register whatever's left. The variants follow the ways fingers fail on a keyboard. Omission drops a character, G-O-G-L-E instead of G-O-O for Google.com. Transposition swaps two adjacent characters, got G-O-O-G-E-L instead of L-E for Google.com. The classic fast typing error. Insertion adds a character, usually a doubled letter, like if you had 3 O's in Google. And the wrong TLD variant keeps the name and changes the end, .co instead of .com, .cm, or one of the hundreds of newer endings that are available nowadays. But the one that catches even technical people is subdomain impersonation. Look at the example on the screen, paypal.com.secure-verify-login.example. The trusted brand is right there at the front. And that's the problem because browsers read domains from the right. The registered domain is the label just before the TLD. Everything to the left of it is a subdomain the attacker created for free. Read right to left, not your normal left to right. Now the advanced tier, characters that render identically but are different characters entirely. Internationalized domain names let domains use non-Latin scripts, which is genuinely important for the global internet. But the Cyrillic letter A, code point U plus 0430, is visually identical to the Latin letter A, U plus 0061. Register a brand name with one substituted character, and the result can be pixel for pixel, indistinguishable in some fonts. The giveaway is Punycode. Internationalized names encode to ASCII with an XN--- prefix. Apple.com spelled with the Cyrillic A is really XN-PPLE-43D.com. That is what certificate transparency logs and security tools see. Pure ASCII has lookalikes too. The letters R in together read as an M at small sizes. Lowercase l and capital I collapse into the same glyph in many fonts. And 0 stands in for the letter O, like our Microsoft example earlier. Modern browsers display Punycode for suspicious mixed script domains, but the policies differ between browsers, and single script lookalikes can still render natively. Do not outsource this entirely to the browser. 2 more families round out the domain layer. Combo squatting involves no typo at all. The attacker combines the real, correctly spelled brand with a plausible keyword, paypal-support.com, for example, netflix-billing-update.com, SecureChase login, etc. Research has consistently found these outnumber classic typos in real phishing infrastructure because they don't rely on user error. They rely on the keyword making the domain feel more legitimate, not less. Bit squatting is a strange one. Hardware makes the typo for you. A single flipped bit in a device's memory, from heat, defects, or cosmic rays, can change one character of a domain name before it ever gets resolved. Flip 1 bit in the letter S, and you get the digit 3. Microsoft.com, with the S being a 3. Flip 1 bit in an A, and you get an E. Register those 1-bit neighbors of a high-traffic domain, and at internet scale, misdirected requests arrive on their own. It's a niche technique, but it is real, and explains some defensive registrations that otherwise look bizarre. So for your domain layer checklist, number 1, read right to left. Find the TLD, step 1 label to the left, and that's the registered domain. Everything further left is decoration. 2, the padlock proves encryption only. Certificates are free and automated now, and a large share of phishing sites serve valid HTTPS. A padlock on a lookalike domain tells you your connection to the attacker is nicely encrypted. You're still connecting to the attacker, just encrypted so nobody else can get in the way. 3, check domain age when something feels off. Whois and RDAP lookup show registration dates, and a brand name domain registered last week is a very strong signal. Don't go there. 4, and this is the habit that defeats the entire category. Navigate independently. Bookmarks. Type known good URLs. And password manager autofill bypass domain impersonation completely. Your password manager refusing to autofill on a page that looks exactly like your bank itself is a warning. The manager matches the real origin, not the pixels. Now, the deepest layer, where the victim does everything right. To understand DNS poisoning, we need a quick review on how resolution works. Your device asks its configured recursive resolver, what is the address for bank.com? The resolver walks the hierarchy, root servers, TLD servers, and the domain's authoritative servers, and brings back an answer. That answer gets cached for its TTL, its time to live, and served to every later client who asks. Your browser then connects to whatever IP address came back. Notice the trust assumption baked into that last step. The browser connects to whatever the answer says. Classic DNS has no built-in way to verify the answer is authentic. That gap is the attack surface. Now, cache poisoning is a race. DNS traditionally runs over UDP with no session. So if an attacker can land a forged response that matches an outstanding query before the legitimate server responds, the resolver accepts the forgery. Matching is the hard part. The forged packet has to match the query's 16-bit transaction ID and its source port. In 2008, security researcher Dan Kaminsky showed how an attacker could force a resolver into asking an endless series of questions, getting unlimited attempts at the race until one guess landed. That finding triggered an emergency industry-wide patching effort. Poisoning is dangerous because of the blast radius. A poisoned record sits in the resolver's cache for its TTL and is served to every single client of that resolver. Nobody mistyped anything. The correct name now points to the attacker for everyone downstream. And there are local variants that achieve the same redirection with less effort: malware editing a host file, a rogue DHCP server handing out an attacker-controlled resolver, or a compromised home router with its DNS settings quietly changed. So how do you identify resolution layer attacks? There are actually 4 signals. First, and this is the big one, a sudden certificate warning on a site you know. You type the right name, DNS sent you to the attacker's server, and that server cannot present a valid certificate for the real domain. The browser throws a full-page warning, so never click through that warning on a site that you know. That warning may be the only visible evidence of the entire attack. Second, resolvers disagree. Query the same name against independent resolvers. Dig against 1.1.1.1 and against 8.8.8.8 and compare. Divergent answers for a stable domain deserve investigation. Third, right site, wrong details. A familiar page that suddenly demands your full credentials when you were already logged in, asks for card numbers or recovery phrases it never asked for before, or silently drops from HTTPS to HTTP. And fourth, for the defenders watching, unexpected record changes, unusually long TTLs on suspicious entries, and resolver logs showing floods of mismatched responses, which is what thousands of failed race attempts look like. A defense at the resolution layer starts with DNSSEC. Zone operators cryptographically sign their DNS records, and a validating resolver checks those against signatures and rejects forged answers outright. One clarification, because this gets confused constantly. DNSSEC authenticates the data. It is not encryption, and it does not hide your queries. Signatures only matter if someone validates them, so use resolvers that do. The major public resolvers 1.1.1.1 and 8.8.8.8 and 9, all 9s, all validate DNSSEC by default. Encrypt the query path with DNS over HTTPS or DNS over TLS, which shuts out on-path spoofing between you and your resolver. And the post-Kaminsky hardening is worth knowing for your exams. Source port randomization and 0x20 case randomization, hex 20, where the resolver randomizes the letter casing of the query name and requires the response to match. Each measure multiplies what an off-path attacker has to guess, turning the race from hours of effort into something impractical. Now, back up at the message layer, 3 DNS publish controls make exact domain spoofing fail loudly. So I talked about their verdicts in the email headers earlier, but here's what they do. SPF publishes which servers are authorized to send mail for a domain. DKIM adds a cryptographic signature providing the message was not altered in transit and genuinely came from the signing domain. DMARC ties them together with 2 critical additions. Alignment, meaning the domain in the visible from header has to match the domain that passed, and policy, telling receivers what to do with failures. Nothing quarantine or reject. With DMARC at enforcement, mail forging your exact domain dies at the receiving server. That is why attackers lean so heavily on lookalike domains instead. Microsoft with a 0 can pass its own authentication perfectly, because the attacker configured SPF and DKIM for the domain they own. Authentication tells you mail is authentic for the domain it claims. You still have to read the domain. So if you defend an organization, here's a consolidated checklist. Domains. Defensively register the obvious typos and TLD variants of your brand, and monitor for the rest. Both new domain registrations and certificate transparency logs, which reveal lookalike certificates the moment they're issued. DNS. Sign your zones with DNSSEC. Point your fleet at validating encrypted resolvers and alert on unexpected record changes. Email. Get DMARC to enforcement. Start at P=none to collect reports. Clean up your legitimate senders, then move to quarantine or reject. People. Deploy phishing-resistant MFA. FIDO choose security keys and passkeys bind authentication to the real origin, so credentials phished on a lookalike domain simply cannot be replayed. And train your users on the identification habits from this video, because every technical control we covered has a human backstop. So that's it. 3 layers, 1 habit, verify before you trust. And these topics, if you're taking any of the CompTIA exams, they map to some Security Plus and some CySA Plus exam objectives as well. Although this was a general cybersecurity video. Thanks for watching.